भगवान की जय, जगतगुरु शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, शिला गुरुदेव की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंद हरे हर। Thank you, His Grace Ambesh Prabhu, His Grace Pranapagyan Mataji, and His Grace Krishna Samarpan Krishna Prabhu for giving me an opportunity to speak on this verse. So today we are continuing the Sri Isopanishad Mantra 16. So I'll share the screen and we'll actually continue our discussion. I think we already halfway through the purport from what I remember from the last week. Okay. Okay. Pushan ekarshe yamasur prajapatya yuvarasmin samuhatejo yate rupam kalyanathamam tate pashyami yosau asau purushaha soham asmi. Pushan ekarshe yamasur prajapatya युवारश्मिन् समूहतेजो यते रूपं कल्याणतमं तते पश्यामि योऽसौ असौ पुरुषः सोऽहम् अस्मि. Jai. Forward words and names per translation and purport. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, or regulative principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I. Okay, Devansh Mother, you want to recite the verse?
Pushan ekarshi Yamasurya Prajapatya Vyuha Rasmin Samuhatejo Yate Rupam Kalyana Tamam Tatte Pashyami Yosava Saupurusha Sohamasmi. Pushan ekarshi Yamasurya Prajapatya Vyuha Rashmin Samuhatejo Yatte Rupam Kalyantamam Tatte Pashyami Yosa Asau Purushah Sohamasmi. O my Lord, O evil philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. So last week, I think we discussed the first four paragraphs. So I think we had a discussion on actually the three, aspects of the Supreme Absolute Truth, and the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. So we went through the four paragraphs, and I think there is a lot of discussion how actually the Bhagwan realization is the topmost and the best realization. And it is the most auspicious realization, and Srila Prabhupada has very nicely described through his purport. I think we stopped. Okay, we have to start from this paragraph in his Bhagavad Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami. So I think that's where we stopped. So I think we will begin from that point onward, and hopefully we'll be able to conclude this mantra today. Mother, you want to read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, zoom in a little bit so you can see it properly. Okay.
In his Bhagavad Sandarbh, Srila Jiva Goswami states, the complete conception of the absolute truth is realized in the personality of Godhead, because he is almighty and possesses full transcendental potency. The full potency of the absolute truth is not realized in the Brahma Jyoti. Therefore, Brahman realization is only partial realization of the personality of Godhead. O learned sages, the first syllable of the word Bhagavan, Bha, has two meanings. The first is one who fully maintains, and the second is guardian. The second syllable Ga means guide, leader, or creator. The syllable Van indicates that every being lives in him and that he also lives in every being. In other words, the transcendental sound Bhagavan represents infinite knowledge, potency, energy, opulence, strength, and influence, all without a tinge of material inebriety.
Okay, so here, Srila Jiva Goswami, from his Bhagavad Sandarbh, he's explaining actually the complete conception of absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where it says that he possesses the full transcendental opulences. And the full potency of the absolute truth is not realized in Brahma Jyotir. So that's the important point. So in a Brahma Jyoti realization, you do not realize all the aspect of the supreme absolute truth. So that's why it is called the Brahman realization is the incomplete realization of the complete, who is the Lord Krishna. And further, Srila Jiva Goswami actually is explaining the meaning of the word Bhagavan. So as we know, actually Bhagavan means one who possesses all the six opulences in full, right? So Bhag means opulences, and Van means that one who possesses it. So that's what actually we know the meaning of word Bhagwan. So here is another meaning of Bhagwan is given by Srila Jiva Goswami. So the first one, Bhagwan, so Parashar Muni actually, he gives the definition of Bhagwan that uh, one who has actually the six opulences in full. So there is a very famous verse which says, Aishwarasya samagrasya virasya yashashaha shriyaha jnana vairagyoshaiva sanambhaga itingana. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one who has the six opulences in full. So these six opulences, as we know, they is all beauty, all strength, all wealth, all knowledge, all renunciation. So one who has these six opulences, that personality is called as Bhagwan. So here, the actually Srila Jiva Goswami is explaining the another meaning. The first syllable of the word Bhagwan, the Bha, has two meanings. The first one is who fully maintains, and the second one is guardian. So the second syllable, Ga, means guide, leader, or creator. So the Bha, or actually the Bharata, the one who maintains. So as we know, the Krishna actually maintains everyone and everything. As Srila Prabhupada actually states that in many of his purports. And how he maintains that actually one of his partial expansion, so Shirodakshaya Vishnu, as a Paramatma, he enters into the heart of all the living entities and into the item of all the actually in the item of all the living and non-living things as well, right? So Srila Prabhupada says by entering into it, actually, he's maintaining everything. Without presence of Paramatma, nothing can be maintained. So as we know, actually, as his Purusha incarnation, actually, the Lord is actually creating this entire universe, the complete material and spiritual world, and he's also maintaining it as well. So that's why it's called as a one who maintains. And the second meaning given here is as a guide or leader or creator. So as a guide, he's also uh, he's a leader of all the living entities, and as guide, as a Paramatma, sitting in the heart of all the living entities, he's guiding everyone back to the Godhead. So as we know, the Paramatma is actually present in the heart of everyone, and he's actually giving instruction to the living entities. So that's why we say that when we are actually not actually very much engaged in rendering the service of Krishna, Paramatma is still guiding you. But when you actually become interested in serving Krishna, it is said that actually you will actually realize or actually you will experience the actually Paramatma's presence, and he guides everyone, and actually he wants everyone to actually get out of this material world and actually return to his abode. So that's how he actually is guiding, and is also he maintaining everyone. The syllable one now, actually, what it indicates here is that every being lives in him and that he also lives in every being. Bhagwan represents infinite knowledge, potency, energy, opulence, strength, and influence, all without a tinge of material inebriety. So one means actually here is actually taken as one who actually lives or resides. So he, as a Bhagwan, he's actually living in every living being as a Paramatma. And all the living beings actually, they finally rest into the Krishna as well, into his potencies or energies. So everything is resting into his energy. Everything is actually sustained and maintained by his potencies. So all the living beings, they actually lives in him. And as a Paramatma, he enters, into all the items of his creation and also in the heart of all the living entities. So that's why it is said here that every being lives in him and that he also lives in every being. So that is a meaning of word one. And that's how actually the Bhagwan represent infinite knowledge, potency, energy, opulence, strength, and influence. And all without the tinge of material inebriety. Yeah, so everything is spiritual there. So that is actually the another meaning, is given by Shira Jiva Goswami here. Okay, Mataji, let me share the screen. We'll continue the purport. Okay. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, am I audible?
Yes, Mataji. Continue reading now.
Yes. The Lord fully maintains his unalloyed devotees and he guides them progressively on the path toward devotional perfection. As the leader of his devotees, he ultimately awards the desired results of devotional service by giving himself to them. The devotees of the Lord see the Lord eye to eye by his causeless mercy. Thus, the Lord helps his devotees reach the supermost spiritual planet, Golok Vrindavan. Being the creator, he can bestow all necessary qualifications upon his devotees so that they can ultimately reach him. The Lord is the cause of all causes. In other words, since there is nothing that caused him, he is the original cause. Consequently, he enjoys his own self by manifesting his own internal potency. The external potency is not exactly manifested by him, for he expands himself as the Purushas, and it is in these forms that he maintains the features of the material manifestation. By such expansions, he creates, maintains, and annihilates the cosmic manifestation.
Yes, Mataji. So here, actually, Srila Prabhupada is further explaining, by giving example that as he's called maintainer, he maintains his unalloyed devotees and he guides them progressively on path towards devotional perfection. And as a leader of his devotees, he ultimately awards the desired results of a devotional service by giving himself to them. Right. So that's why it's called maintainer and also as a guide or a creator. So here specifically mentioned that he maintains his unalloyed devotees. So in Bhagavad Gita as well, where Krishna says that he is actually equally, disposed to everyone. However, I think it's Bhagavad Gita in chapter, it's chapter 9, verse 29, where it is said that sammoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshostina priya ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mai te teshu chapyaham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. So Lord is actually, all the living entities, they are actually the children of the Lord, So he is actually partial, is impartial. He maintains, and provides everything for maintenance of everyone. However, the one, actually who renders loving devotional service unto him, he's actually is specially favored, his devotees. And actually, here it is says that actually that um, he's called the friend, who is in him, and also I'm also friend to him. So there is a special relationship between devotees and the Lord. So that point is very important. That actually, Srila Prabhupada again further in purport, it is stated that he is actually uh, favored. The devotees are actually favored by the Lord because of their loving devotional service. The special care is taken as they are actually surrender unto his lotus feet. So, and it's also said here that as a leader, he ultimately awards the desired results of devotional service by giving himself to them. So, as we know, the devotional service, even the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or the actual chanting of his glories. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So by chanting this Mahamantra, we are actually requesting his internal potency, that is Srimati Radharani, so that we can actually given the opportunity to be engaged, in rendering the loving service unto the Lord. So that's a prayer that we sing. And as we sing this prayer, so we all have experienced that actually we get the opportunity to serve him in many various ways, So there is always opportunity to serve Krishna. So it is also says that just by reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we are also rendering the service. By chanting his holy name is also a service. So there is everyone has opportunity, to actually be engaged in serving the Lord. And as we serve and actually remain engaged, he actually giving the actually desired results. So by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, actually our wish is already fulfilled. We're asking for the devotional service, and the service opportunity is already given. And as one actually makes a progress on the devotional path and attains the perfection, it is said that when actually pure devotees sing his glories, Srila Prabhupada, and I think this reference also came in previous discussion as well, that actually when pure devotee chants, actually Krishna is actually he appears there, and actually is dancing on the lips of the pure devotees. And it is also actually confirmed. I think there is one reference given in Srimad Bhagavatam, where it is said that actually Krishna actually he's always present, where his devotees is singing his glories. Naham vasami vaikunte yoginam hrideshuva yatra gayanti madbhakta tatra tishtati narad. So he says that actually to Narad Muni that actually you will find me where my devotees are actually singing my glories, not in the heart of the yogis or not in the way even Vaikunt, but you will definitely find me where my devotees are actually singing his glories. So all the devotees actually desires actually is fulfilled by the Lord. And as we know, there are many examples that actually because of their devotion, they actually there are some of the pure devotees like Narad Muni, they have seen Krishna, eye to eye. So he's fulfilling everyone's desires. There are many examples given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Prahlad Maharaj is there. Dhruv Maharaj is there, who have seen Supreme Personality of Godhead eye to eye. That actually what Srila Prabhupada is mentioned here, and that only happens because of his causeless mercy. So ultimately, actually, Krishna, is actually revealing to his devotees, within their heart, and actually helping them to progress on this devotional path, so they reach their ultimate destination. That is actually the topmost abode in a spiritual planet, that is Golak Vrindavan. Also, as Srila Prabhupada says, that when you become a devotee, all the actually good qualities, they manifest in you automatically. So once you become actually devotional and you actually engage in actually rendering the service, all the good qualities are automatically actually they manifest within the devotees. So Krishna is actually bestowing all this actually all his mercy, and he's actually making his devotee, is helping his devotee to progress, as fast as possible. So that's what we understand by actually studying this purport, that actually as a Paramatma, he's guiding everyone. But when you actually engage yourself, in serving Krishna, then actually there's a special relationship that is actually rejuvenated, the long lost relationship between the Lord and the living entity is re-established. And Lord is actually takes charge, and he guides his devotees so that he can make actually progress on this devotional path. And further, it is said that actually there is also actually discussion on the external potency. So as internal potency, so he enjoys his own self by his manifesting his own internal potency. So as we know that actually the pure devotees gives, they actually render service and they try to actually please the Lord. And and Lord Krishna, as his internal potency, actually Srimati Radharani actually is a manifestation of his internal potency, So that's how actually Krishna enjoys. And as external potency, it is said here that actually is not exactly manifested by him, for he expands himself as a Purushas. And it is in these forms he maintains the features of the material manifestation. By such expansion, he creates, maintains, and annihilates the cosmic manifestation. So the external potency, so as we know that actually Krishna expands into this Purusha, actually expansions, it is said that I say Karano Dakshai Vishnu. So Karano Dakshai Vishnu or Mahavishnu, he creates, actually he creates, and as a Garbhodikshai Vishnu, he's entering into all these created universes. And as further expansion as a Shirodakshai Vishnu, he's entering into each and every item and into the heart of all the devotees. And that's how he actually maintains them. So that is the actually feature of his external potential. Okay, I think we'll continue the purport now. Okay, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
My screen is still loading.
You can't see the screen, Mataji?
It's actually readjusting. Just a second. Yeah. The living entities are also differentiated expansions of the Lord's self. And because some of them desire to be lords and imitate the Supreme Lord, he allows them to enter into the cosmic creation with the option to fully utilize their propensity to lord it over nature. Because of the presence of his parts and parcels, the living entities, the entire phenomenal world is stirred into action and reaction. Thus, the living entities are given full facilities to lord it over material nature, but the ultimate controller is the Lord himself, in his plenary feature as Paramatma, the Supersoul, who is one of the Purushas.
Yeah, you continue the next.
Thus, there is a gulf of difference between the living entity, Atma, and the controlling Lord, Paramatma, the soul and the Supersoul. Paramatma is the controller, and the Atma is the controlled. Therefore, they are in different categories. Because the Paramatma fully cooperates with the Atma, he is known as the constant companion of the living being.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So here, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the position of the living entities. So it's called that they are the differentiated expansion of the Lord's self. And because some of them desired to be lords and imitate the Supreme Lord, he allowed them to enter into cosmic creation with the option to fully utilize their propensity to lord it over the nature. So, as a living entities, the Krishna says that Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So these living entities, they are nothing but the part and parcel of the Lord. And they also have this tendency, because they are very minute, to be, they have the desire or tendency to be a Lord, just like be like Lord Krishna. And actually, they want to enjoy like Lord Krishna. So that's actually tendency to lord it over the material nature. So that's why actually Krishna creates this cosmic, material creation. And actually, he allowed them to enter into this cosmic, or in this material world, to take birth. So they can actually utilize their full propensity, to lord it over the material nature. So that's why actually all the living entities, they take birth in this material world because of their tendency to actually lord it over the material nature. So they want to be like Krishna, they want to enjoy this material nature. And just to fulfill their desire, the Krishna has created this material world. So here it is said that because of this presence of this all the living entities into this cosmic manifestation, this whole phenomenal world is turned into action and reaction. So in an attempt to actually enjoy this world, the living entities are, they engage themselves in various activities, in an attempt to enjoy, they are actually doing many things, actually they are working hard. And as we say, we try to manipulate the matter. We try to actually create the actually various things and facilities through them, and we try to actually enjoy this material world. So there is actually action, and there is a always equal and opposite reactions as well. So that's how we actually get into this actually perpetual cycle of actually karma, the action and reaction. So further, it is said that they are given the full facilities to lord it over the material nature. However, the ultimate controller is the Lord himself in his plenary feature as Paramatma, Super Soul, who is the one of the Purushas. And there is a gulf of difference between living entity and the controlling Lord, that is Paramatma. So Krishna is called Ishvara, Ishvara Paramakrishna. So Ishvara Paramakrishna. So Ishwar means controller. Srila Prabhupada gives explain this point in a purport in Bhagavad Gita, where he says that Ishwar means a controller, and uh, Krishna is a Ishvara Paramakrishna. He's a Param, he's actually supreme controller. Whereas all the living entities, they are also Ishwar, they are also controllers, but their field of activity is very limited. They can only control certain things. You can control your family, you can control your business, and so on. But you cannot control everyone and everything. So that's why the living entities are also called controller. However, they are relative controllers. Whereas actually Lord Krishna, he's actually supreme controller. Srila Prabhupada says that he controls everyone and everything. So he's a ultimate supreme controller. So there is a big difference between the supreme controller and the actually living entities who are also controllers, but they are relative controllers. So that is the point we have to actually understand. We cannot become a supreme controller. And also Paramatma, as a Paramatma, he's actually living in everyone's heart, and he fully cooperates with the Atma, individual Atma. So that's why Paramatma is called a constant companion of the living beings. So Srila Prabhupada explained this point very nicely, where he says that actually Paramatma is always accompanying a conditioned soul. So condition is very important, conditioned soul in this material world. And the reason he accompanies the individual soul, so that he can actually guide him, back to actually spiritual world. However, as it is previously stated that actually the individual atmas, these living entities has a propensity to lord it over. They actually ignore the instructions of the Paramatma, and they continue to actually try to enjoy in this material world, and that's how actually they become miserable, because no one can actually become ultimately happy in this material world. That's why it is called, this material world is a padam padam chivipida, there is a, every step there is actually danger, and there is a suffering, and everyone is suffering, even there is a happiness, it's only a momentary, it doesn't last, it is not eternal. However, Krishna says that actually uh, when actually this individual atma, when he turns his face towards Krishna, and he surrenders unto him, then actually his path is clear, then he's actually can easily cross beyond this actually material world, beyond the actually three modes of material nature, and he can actually attain the liberation. So this is actually point that we have to understand that Paramatma is always accompanying Atma, as long it is remain conditioned, and it doesn't matter actually in which body he takes birth, right from the actually the highest living being to Brahma to the lowest being, like Srila Prabhupada says that worm and stool, the actually Paramatma is always in their heart, always actually accompanying them and guiding them. Okay, Mataji, we'll continue the purport.
The all-pervading feature of the Lord, which exists in all circumstances of waking and sleeping, as well as in potential states, and from which the Jiva Shakti, living force, is generated as both conditioned and liberated souls, is known as Brahman. Since the Lord is the origin of both Paramatma and Brahman, he is the origin of all living entities and all else that exists. One who knows this engages himself at once in the devotional service of the Lord. Such a pure and fully cognizant devotee of the Lord is fully attached to him in heart and soul. And whenever such a devotee assembles with similar devotees, they have no engagements but the glorification of the Lord's transcendental activities. Those who are not as perfect as the pure devotees, namely those who have realized only the Brahman or Paramatma features of the Lord, cannot appreciate the activities of the perfect devotee. The Lord always helps the pure devotees by imparting necessary knowledge within their hearts, and thus, out of his special favor, he dissipates all the darkness of ignorance. The speculative philosophers and yogis cannot imagine this because they more or less depend on their own strength. As stated in the Katha Upanishad, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 23, the Lord can be known only by those whom he favors and not by anyone else. Such special favors are bestowed upon his pure devotees only. Sri Isopanishad thus points to the favor of the Lord, which is beyond the purview of the Brahmajyotir.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in this final paragraph, Srila Prabhupada actually again explaining the all-pervading feature of the Lord, that is Brahman, where actually there are many actually references in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and also just I think there is one point I wanted to read out to you. Yes, so where it is said that he is the supreme soul, is both all-pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of the all the past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. So the actually the Brahman actually is also is called the all-pervading impersonal feature of the Lord. And here it is said that actually from this actually Brahman, the Jiva Shakti, the living force is generated as both conditioned and liberated souls. So the conditioned soul, they actually appear, they manifest in this material world, or material nature, and they try to lord it over the material nature. Whereas the liberated souls, they return back, or they are in the eternal abode of the Lord. So they both actually, it is said that actually, they are actually they manifest from the Brahman, as it is called, that actually the living entities, they are part of the Tatastha Shakti. So as we know, there are the three potencies, the Antaram Shakti, that is internal potency, the external potency, that is actually the material energy, and the Tatastha Shakti, or marginal potency, that's where actually the living beings actually, they're created from the Tatastha Shakti. So I think there's one reference I came across while meditating on this point. Let me read that out to you. Okay. Mm. Yeah, so it is, I think this is a reference where it is said that as a spiritual park of the beam emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord, were all permanently related with him and equal to him in quality. So spiritual park, so as they are actually the living entities, the minute living entities, so they are actually spiritual park of the beam emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord, right? So the Brahma Jyoti, or Brahman, is nothing but actually the rays from the Lord Krishna's body. And actually, that's where the spiritual parts are actually emanating from. And they're all permanently related with the Lord, and they're in equivalent quality with the Lord. However, when they appear in this material world, the material energies actually, they cover the spiritual part of the living entities. And whereas in the absence of this material covering, the living being in the Vaikuntha Lok are never forgetful of their identities. They are eternally cognizant of their relationship with the Lord in their constitutional position of rendering a loving devotional service to the Lord. And because they're constantly engaged in transcendental service of the Lord, it is natural to conclude that their senses are also transcendental, and for one cannot serve the Lord with the material senses. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha Lok do not possess material senses with which to lord it over the material nature. So coming back, so this is actually a description given, how all the spiritual or Jiva Shakti force, so that how it relates to the Brahman. And it is actually, Jiva Shakti is generated as both conditioned and liberated souls. So Lord actually is the origin of both the Paramatma and Brahman as well. And thus he is the origin of all living entities on all else that exist. So these are all the technical points, but I think we should understand these points. So when we read the purport, I think it's easier to actually realize these points and how that actually relate to each other. And the further it is said that actually that one who knows this, he engage himself in rendering service unto the Lord, and such pure and fully cognizant devotee, they are fully attached to the Lord in heart and soul. And whenever such a devotee assemble with similar devotees, they have no engagement but the glorification of the Lord's transcendental activities. So this point is also explained in Bhagavad Gita, the seed verses, where it is said, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Sorry, the one before that. So I was referring to Machitta matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantasya mamanityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. So the same point is explained here. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So the similar point, Srila Prabhupada states that actually one who knows this, that actually Krishna is the actually the source of both, the Brahman and the Paramatma, and ultimately he is the source of all the living entities. And one who realizes this point, they engage themselves in serving the Lord, with a loving devotional attitude, and constantly they serve the Lord. So the same point here is confirmed that actually whenever these actually the like-minded devotees they get together or they associate with each other, they always derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So they glorify the Lord and his activities. And it is said that actually, so this is the actually the real devotional service, and there is a reciprocation between the Lord and his devotees. But we do not see this in actually in a Brahman realization, because there is no reciprocation, there is no loving relationship between the Lord and the living entity. So the actually the ultimate, the Bhagwan realization, and that's why it is called, this is a topmost realization, and it is a all auspicious realization, because there is actually relationship between the Lord and his devotees, and it is said that actually they always enjoy, actually glorifying the Lord and his activities. And Lord also said that he's always present, where his devotees are singing his glories. So that's why actually even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also mentioned that actually in this Brahman, the Brahmand Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jiva, Guru Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lada Bija. So the actually once this actually the seeds of the devotional service, they are planted in our heart, then our tender creeper of devotional service, it grows nicely, when we chant his glories, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and we engage ourselves in loving devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says that this actually the plant of devotional service, it grows, nicely to that point that actually as we intensify our devotional service, that plant grows bigger and bigger, and actually ultimately it penetrates through this actually material covering or material universe, and it reaches the Brahman. And if we further engage ourselves in actually devotional service, this plant actually grows further, and actually it reaches the spiritual planet and ultimately takes the shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality, that is Lord Krishna. And that's how it finally it fructifies, it bears the fruit, where devotees, it is said that they situate themselves in an unalloyed, pure love towards the Lord. So the similar actually points are given here. And it is also said that actually, so this is a description about his pure devotees, whereas the actually one who have only realized Brahman and Paramatma, teacher of the Lord, they cannot appreciate also the activities of the perfect devotees, because they haven't attained that stage, So even for us, we are actually a neophytes, we try to understand these subject matters. So because we are still contaminated, our bhakti is also called Mishran Bhakti, it's actually contaminated with all the material desires. So we cannot actually really appreciate or understand actually how the pure devotee actually he behaves, or we cannot even understand his activities. However, here further, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that actually, so this is the actually one who has actually attained the Brahman and Paramatma, realization. But for the actually the speculative philosophers and yogis, they cannot actually imagine this, because they more or less dependent on their own strength. So this is actually the impersonalists of Mayavadis, or even the actually the scientific, the scientists or philosophers, they try to actually understand Lord, by on the dint of their own knowledge, or the experimental knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada always says that you cannot understand Krishna, on your own, or actually with whatever intelligence you got, because our senses are imperfect. Even our intelligence that is given to us in this conditioned body is also very limited. So you cannot actually conceive the inconceivable Lord, with these imperfect senses. And Srila Prabhupada said, no matter how much you can speculate or actually experiment, you cannot even come closer to understanding the Lord, who's actually the supreme personality of Godhead. It's not possible at all. So that's why there is only one way to understand Krishna, and that is through the process of devotional service. So that's why it is further mentioned here that actually by rendering devotional service, pure devotional service, you can actually make a progress and you can actually develop a devotional attitude. And once you actually situate in that state, then he has to say that actually you receive the favor of the Lord. And here said the Lord can be only known by those who he favors, and not by anyone else. Such special favors are bestowed upon his pure devotees only. Sri Isopanishad thus points to the favor of the Lord, which is beyond the purview of the Brahma Jyoti. So the final conclusive point here is to actually we can only understand Lord Krishna through the devotional service, pure devotional service. So and that is the way. We cannot actually understand Lord by actually this Mayavadi philosophy or impersonalist attitude, or even actually by speculating like scientists or mental speculators. So that is not the way. So if you want to actually understand the Lord, so Bhakti Yoga process is the only one process that actually will help us to reach to the stage where we can obtain the favor of the Lord, and that's how one should actually try to understand Krishna. And it is said that this is beyond the purview of the Brahma Jyotiran. So you cannot actually realize this point, at a Brahman realization stage, because there is no actually, there is no rendering of service or there is no any devotional relationship between the living entity and the Lord. So you will not understand this point. You have to make a further progress, until you reach the stage where you can actually understand the Bhagwan, aspect of the supreme absolute truth. So that is actually the most perfect and complete realization of the Lord. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. So we conclude this mantra now. So if you have any questions or realization, you can ask now. No? Okay, then